Hello, welcome. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, seems like audio's looking pretty good. Alrighty. Well, tomorrow is the day that the iFlash2PS2 kit releases on my website for sale. So what I'm doing today is one final pre-release live stream to do another installation of the finalized design. And I'm gonna take it slow today because I'm trying to also capture still images for a written guide that's going to go on my website. So there's going to be a lot of, pausing to get good shots at, get good angles and stuff so that I can get some good photos. But if anybody has any questions or anything along the way, I will obviously be happy to answer them. So we'll go ahead and get started. The PS2 we're going to be installing in today is an SCPH 70011, which this is the first one I've done. This is basically the same as the 70012. I'm not really sure what the difference is between these two different model numbers, but they seem to have just a slight revision of the same V12 motherboard, so it should be the same as any other V12 install. Now, the flex cable has been updated a little bit since last time. If we take a look at an old flex cable, That's the new one. Let's see. There's a few key changes. So this here is the last generation flex cable on the right and the new one on the left. A couple of key changes that have been made is that up here there have been a couple of anchors added to make it easier to install the top side portion of the flex. And I've also made a modification in this area right here. As you can see, there's an extra little cutout up there, and that's because there is a small resistor that is close to where those pads are on this board that makes it difficult to get that board to get the flex cable to lay flat when you're soldering. It makes it a little bit more difficult to solder. So by putting that cutout there, that resistor can kind of not be in the way of the flex cable, so it should be easier to install. So those are the changes, and this is going to be the final retail version of the flex cable. So we're going to go ahead and zoom back out here, and we'll go ahead and get started disassembling the PS2. The launch for the kits on my website is going to be 2 p.m. tomorrow, Central Standard Time. So whatever time zone you are, 2 p.m. CST is going to be what you need to convert from. Okay, we'll go ahead and start disassembling. And again, I'm going to be focusing on trying to frame up clear shots as I go, because I'm going to pull stills out of this video for the for writing the guide. All right. So Tyler, this version of the mod, hold on, let me put this screw back in here. Take a screenshot. Yeah, Tyler, this is going to be the 70,000 series consoles, but specifically for this first run that I'm doing, that's launching tomorrow, this is going to be for V12 models. So that's going to be like any 70,012, any of the 70,011s should be V12 motherboards. If you have a 70,001, there's a high likelihood that it's a V13 motherboard. And V13 motherboards are not supported on this first run. But I have a V13 power board that's redesigned to work with the V13 motherboards. I got prototypes of it. There is a small error that needs to be fixed on them, so I've already fixed the error and sent them back out to the manufacturer, but they probably won't be here for another week. So the V13s will be available next week, hopefully. But for now, V12 is what's supported, so that should be 70,012, 70,011. And possibly some other models. There's some PAL models that I don't know the exact model numbers for. I need to go through and collect a list of those, which I will for the written guide as well. So, but we'll go ahead and continue by removing the screws here. 70,004 can be either V12 or V13. I figure that's probably the case for a lot of the various models that are available. But it seems like 70,011 and 70,012 are like pretty much guaranteed V12s because those are the first models that were released in the US. But 70,001 seems to be V13, like all V13 from what I can tell. All right, so we got the screws out. Go ahead and open this thing up. Yes, there will be a VOD of this video left up. You'll be able to watch it later. I also plan to create a fully edited video as well, but that's probably going to be a little bit later on once I get the V13 board ready. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and remove the modem. By removing these two screws here. Thanks, Jinxnator. Have a good evening. Alright. That's the modem, and then we'll go ahead and unscrew the optical drive as well. And then behind the optical drive, there is one extra screw, which you can remove without having to remove the optical drive if you just slide it out of the way. Just be careful. Oh. Something I forgot to do. There's a screw down here on the controller port as well that needs to be removed. Okay, now we're going to carefully flip the optical drive, or the entire motherboard over, but holding onto the optical drive so it doesn't fall and damage any cables or anything. And then we're going to remove these 4 screws here on the back that hold the heatsink in place. All right, so now that that's been done, we'll go ahead and carefully flip it back over. Again, holding on to the optical drive so it doesn't come loose. And then we're going to disconnect the battery connector, the fan connector, and the optical drive connectors so we can remove the entire top shield. All right, and now that those are removed, the top shield should come off cleanly. And you can just set it aside somewhere. All right. Okay, so now we're going to start installing the main flex cable. First, let me check something on here. Okay, yeah, we're good to go. All right, so we're going to start installing the main flex cable. So the area we're going to be working in is right down here. These 3 resistor packages are where we're going to be working. Let me go ahead and get us zoomed in. I think that should be pretty good. So the new flex cable sits right here, and as you can see, that resistor, this resistor right here, that used to be in the way, causing the flex cable to lift up there, which made it difficult to solder to those pads. But now that resistor has a cutout that allows it to just slide right, allows the flex cable to slide right through here. And now this is flush with the motherboard, just like the rest of it is. And then you also have a couple of these anchor points that you can add some solder to help hold it in place as well, which is what we're going to do here. So we get it lined up real good. Oh, hold on. Let me take a screenshot here. Got it. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and anchor it in place. So the first thing we'll do is we'll solder some, we'll put a little bit of solder on this pad right here. Maybe. It's pretty corroded, let's see. There we go. So now we have a little solder on that pad. That pad is not electrically connected to anything. It just serves as an anchor point for the flex cable to hold it in place right next to this resistor package. Okay, so we'll go ahead and solder that in place right there. And that anchors the flex cable where it's supposed to be, which should help a lot compared to the original design, which didn't have anything over in this area to help you anchor it in place. And while we're here, we'll go ahead and anchor the two sides as well. So now the flex is fully anchored. I'm going to flip the board around so it's a little bit easier for me to see what I'm doing. All right, so now we'll just go ahead and get in here with a little bit of flux, and we'll start soldering in each of these points. And it's all about clearing the bridges. You're gonna get bridges, you just gotta be able to clear them. All right, so that's all the resistor packages. Then we've got these 4 points here. Just gonna put a little bit of solder on each one of them. And that's it for the top side. Get a screen cap of that. Spray that down a little bit, clean it up. Okay, so that's it for the top side of the board. So now we'll go ahead and flip it over. I'm going to shove the modem underneath here just to prop the board up a little bit so it stays relatively flat. Alright, now we'll get into the area we're going to be working up top, which is right up here. So what you'll want to do is fold the flex cable over. Now, hold on just a second. Okay, fold the flex cable over. And basically you want to line it up with this resistor package right up here. And everything else should line up just fine based on that. So once you folded it over, you can crease it a little bit. Doesn't hurt it to crease it a little bit. And it looks like it's lined up pretty well. So what we'll go ahead and do, so we'll go ahead and solder one of these points. Now, which point you go for doesn't really matter that much. You just need to get one of these points soldered so the flex cable will lay flat. So for this, I'm going to go for this point right here. And now the flex cable is held flat, so we can work on everything else. I'm going to go ahead and anchor this cable down now that I've got it tacked in place where we want it. So we're going to hit this anchor right here. And it can be difficult because it wants to flex back up. So you want to use like some tweezers or something. Just heat it up, press it down flat. And now it's anchored in place. Alright, so we'll go ahead and work the rest of the flex cable, and then I'm going to come back and anchor the other points once I'm done soldering. So we'll zoom in a little bit more here so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so I've redesigned the area around these three little resistors a little bit because they've always been the most difficult area to solder. So I've pulled them closer, and I gave some little castellated hooks that hook the contact over even closer to the resistor where you're supposed to solder. So it should be even easier to do than it ever has been before. So we'll go ahead and get those first. Have a little bit of a bridge there on that resistor on the right. Now it's cleared. And there you go. That's the easiest I've ever done those three resistors there. So I think that design change was definitely worthwhile. So we'll go ahead and get this point here as well. This point here. We'll get this point here and here. We'll go ahead and add some solder to this one because I was just using the solder that was already on the board, which can be kind of crusty. Alright, and then the resistor package is all that's left up here. Okay. So that's all the soldering done for the main flex. Go ahead and clean it up a little bit. I'll get a screen capture of it. Okay, so now that all the actual critical soldering is done, I'm gonna go ahead and install these other two anchors, and these are really just here for strain relief because you don't want the cable to pull on these sensitive solder joints. There we go. Okay. Sup, Modsville? Did you see the new design that did you see that just now? The new design on those 3 resistors? It's easier than it was on the model that you have. You should back it up like a couple of minutes and just take a look at how easy it was soldering those 3 resistors. I made a change since yours, and it's you'll like it. Okay, so that's done. The next thing is going to be installing the power board. So we'll go ahead and get that down here. Now the power board just pops in place. This is the V12 power board. So this fits in place right here. Now, something you'll need to know is V12 motherboards. Basically, V12 and V13 motherboards are pretty much the same. This one is a V12, and the V12 does not have any components right here, and that's where I chose to have the power board sit. But unfortunately, on V13 motherboards, such as this one, Sony added some extra circuitry there for the laser fix. So now you've got all these parts here, and the V12 board doesn't fit because it sits on top of all of those extra components. Something I've been working on, and it's going to be available very soon, is the V13 compatible power board. So the way that this one works is, instead of sitting, it still sits in the same spot, but the SD card slot is moved over by one vent hole, and all the components that are on this board just pass through a cutout on the power board. So it basically sits in the same place. You just, instead of having the SD card slot here, you have it on the next vent hole over. And there are components underneath here. There's a few components there, but I have a cutout underneath the SD card slot that allows those components to pass through without being impacted. So you can install it right here, and it fits together just like it's supposed to on the V12, but it's compatible with the V13. And it's also still compatible with the V12 as well. So once this one gets finished, once I'm finished with this one, it's going to become just the universal power board, and every kit will come with this one, so it'll work on V13 and V12. The only issue, the reason why this is not launching tomorrow is because there was a dimensional error in this design, and so the SD card slot doesn't line up correctly on these prototypes that I have. So I've corrected that and sent it back off to the manufacturer, and I'll hopefully have these in like a week or so. Yeah, Thomas, this is a push like spring-loaded push slot. So yeah, whenever you push the card in, it locks, and then push it again, and it'll pop out. So it should be easy to get in and out through that vent hole. Yeah, Modsville, I put a, it's like a 3/4 via that hooks around to the front of the resistor. So it's even easier to get a connection there than it was on the earlier design. All right, let me get a screenshot here. And then we'll go ahead and install the power board. So it just slots in place right here. And then we'll just go ahead and anchor it in place. Now sometimes, depending on your PS2 and how it was manufactured, you might need to remove some solder from this ground post on the side of the USB port. Some of them have a lot of excess solder, which prevents the SD card slot from sitting flush. Some of them don't, so it just kind of depends on how your particular motherboard was manufactured. All right, so that's all the ground points, and then we need to get the 8.5 volt power point, which is right here. And that is done now. Alright, in addition to the new main flex cable, I've also got a new SD card extender flex. The old one kind of got a little too close to this screw post here, and I didn't care for it. So I've designed a new model, which I had laying on the table here, and now I can't find it. Well, I don't know where that one went, so we'll just pull another one out of the packaging. I'll find it later. So, this new SD card extender flex has a bit of an angle to it. So when you install it, it veers out of the way of this screw post. So now it won't be squished by the shell anymore. That was the issue with the old one, is that it kind of would get squished by the top of the PS2 shell, and I didn't like that. It didn't seem to cause any problems, but I just don't like the fact that it was kind of squished in there by the screw. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started installing this flex cable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin the very first pad here. Then I'm going to slide the flex cable in place. Add just a bit of flux. And now the flex cable is in position, and we can go through and solder the rest of the points. We'll go ahead and solder the other one on the other end here real quick. That'll hold it in place, and we'll just get each of the other ones. I think we have a slight bridge here. We'll go ahead and fix that. Yep. Okay, we're good. All right, so the next thing that we got to do is prep the iFlash. So we've got all of our flex cables soldered here. Oh, hold on. Let me get a screen cap. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is prep our iFlash. I'm going to try a new method today for prepping the iFlash. Previously, we had just used a soldering iron to get to heat up each of the points on the corners of the SD card slot, and then, you know, pop each corner loose until we get the entire top shield off of here, and then we would individually pull each of the pins out. Well, what we're going to try today is we're going to use one of these hot plates to heat up the slot from the underside and just pull it off. Now, I have already killed an iFlash doing this, and basically what happened was, the first time I tried this, I heated up the entire board, and internally, underneath the epoxy that covers this main IC that controls the iFlash, the solder heated up and ended up bridging in there and creating a short. So what I would recommend if you're going to use a hot plate to do this is that you only heat the SD card slot portion. Don't heat this area over here at all if you can avoid it. So I'm going to just use the corner of my hot plate to remove this, and we're going to hope we don't damage anything that way. If we do, it is what it is, and this may not be a viable method, but I think it is a good method. You just can't heat the entire board, because since this is under epoxy, the solder, who knows what it's going to do, and you can't fix it afterwards. If the solder reflows under there and then it ends up going somewhere it's not supposed to go, you can't fix it. So we're gonna let this hot plate heat up, and we'll get that going as soon as it's done. Yeah, there will be global shipping. I ship to most countries, I would assume. I ship to a lot of countries. If you try to order and you notice that your country is not available as a location I can ship to, just send me a contact. Just go to my website's contact form and send me an email. Basically, for international shipping, I have to individually add each country and calculate the flat rate cost, because I don't have a shipping calculator for global shipping. So if you're not on the list, then just send me an email, and I will look into what the rates are and add your country to the list. So I'm going to be heating this up to about 240 degrees Celsius. That seems to be a good working temperature for the iFlash board for the solder that's on here. And then we're gonna, like I said, I'm gonna try to keep the board located on the corner of the hot plate, and try not to heat the actual chip at all, if possible. If you don't have a hot plate, then you can refer to the previous streams that we did it the other way, because that just only requires a soldering iron. We're not to 240 yet, but we're getting close. So I'm going to go let the board start to warm up. Oh, and also, if you do this, you're going to want to remove the sticker from the bottom of the iFlash before you do this, because it will melt onto your hot plate. Okay, we're starting to get a little bit of solder melt on the side of this SD card slot. On this corner. We're at about at 230 degrees right now. Yeah, we're definitely getting some melt going on. There we go. There it goes. All right, we're going to go ahead and shut this down. And we'll let it cool off a little bit. And get our hot plate out of the way. I really like this hot plate. It's nice for doing small scale SMD assembly. Like if I just got to install some parts to a large quantity of boards, I can just put a whatchamacallit, a panel. I can put a small panel on there, heat them up, add components to it. Super easy. All right. So that's our board. I'm going to double check that we don't have any shorts, because that was the issue with the other one. When I heated the entire board, we had some shorts to ground on the power rail. And we got nothing. No shorts. So we're good. Yeah, so basically just as long as you don't heat the area under the epoxy, you'll be okay if you use a hot plate. When I do installations, the hot plate is how I think I'm going to do it, because it's just seems like the more efficient way to do it, as long as you're being careful with it. All right, let's get the PS2 back in here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and install our mounting bracket for the top panel. So let's go grab that real quick. So we have a two-piece mounting bracket here. Alrighty, so this piece sits right here. You want the iFlash flex to go underneath this piece back here, but you want the SD card flex to be on top of it. You don't want it underneath. And then the other piece just sits right here, and they actually snap together, so it'll end up being like this. The final price on the kit is $27 plus shipping. All right, so we're going to get our top shield back in here. Carefully flip it over and set it down, and then we can simply drop our console on top of it. Drop our motherboard on top of it, rather. Making sure that the power reset board passes through this thin little piece of shield here so that it doesn't get pinched, because that flex cable will get pinched if you're not careful. But once we have the board sitting on top of the top shield, we'll go ahead and get our screws that we pulled out earlier, and we'll start reinstalling them to hold the heatsink back on. Okay, so the bottom 4 screws go in, and then again, you're going to carefully, making sure not to drop the optical drive, flip it back over, and now we can install the one screw that's hiding underneath the optical drive. And then we'll go ahead and install the 4 optical drive screws. And we'll go ahead and install the optical drive cabling as well. DJC 5166, no, there are no issues with the retro gem. I did an install with this board and a retro gem last stream, and they both fit perfectly. They don't conflict with each other at all. Okay, we got all our screws and all of our cables reconnected. So now we can flip the board back over, and we can install the iFlash board. Now the iFlash board will actually just snap in place. Let's see. My screws are... My mounting is a little bit too wide here. Let's see. Let's loosen these up. Okay, so now these are closer together. They were a little bit off because the screws didn't line up exactly right. There we go. So now the iFlash board is snapped in place. And you can go ahead and install the flex cable. Actually, you might want to do that before snapping into place. But you can do it after as well. It's just a little bit easier if you do it before. Yeah. We go ahead and unsnap it real quick and do this. So we're going to go ahead and install the iFlash Flex. Close the locking lever there. And then we'll go ahead and pop it back in place. Like so. And then the SD card flex just needs to be soldered in place as well. So we'll zoom in here. We'll get this pad here first. Go ahead and hit it with some flux. And just solder each pad in. There we go. All right, let's give this a quick spray with some alcohol. Clean it up and take a picture, and then we will move on. Excellent, so that's it for the iFlash install. All done there. So now we'll do a quick reassembly. We'll install the SD card and do some testing, and then we'll be good to go on this one. Okay, I need to find where my SD card went, because I think I blew it away with my air gun. Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we got a 1 terabyte SD card with a bunch of games on it. We're going to go ahead and flip this thing over and do a quick test run. So we'll put the SD card into the slot here. And we'll get our FreeMC boot memory card and our controller. All right, let's take a look, see what we got. First thing I'm going to do is boot into the hard drive test application. So you can see it has detected the iFlash platform iPod adapter. It supports LBA48, and the drive capacity is 1,000 gigabytes. Let's go ahead and do a speed test. We'll do the sequential raw read test because this will give us the entire range of speeds. So you can kind of see what the top performance of the drive would be. So as you can see, the thing pretty much tops out around 24 megabytes per second, which is faster than SMB, it's faster than MX4 SIO, it's faster than DVD reading, it's faster than USB reading by far. I think it's faster than FireWire, maybe. I'm not totally sure about that one, but it's faster than everything except for an actual SATA drive. SATA drives are usually, I think they can do about 80 megabytes per second, but this is still significantly faster than all the other methods of loading. All right, let's go ahead and power this off. Oh, well, actually, I was going to go into OPL, show you all some games. All right, so there you go. This is the Grim Doomer EXFAT version of OPL, and I've got this SD card formatted in EXFAT. One thing to note about this, if you do the EXFAT version of OPL, it's way easier to use because you can just pop a card into a computer and drag and drop games onto it, which is awesome. But if you're going to use ZSOs, which are compressed ISOs to save space, which is what I've done here, you're going to need to turn on mode 1 for basically almost all of the games because for some reason ZSOs, the IOP is able to decompress ZSOs so fast that it actually outpaces the correct timings. It's even faster than reading off of like a full speed SSD or something. And that causes a lot of games to have issues. So you want to turn on mode 1 for all your games if you're gonna do ZSOs. And that's what I've done here. But we'll go ahead and fire up a game just to show that everything is working correctly. Let's see. Final Fantasy 12 is a good one to show because it typically has issues with the opening FMV. So we'll let this play a little bit. I've got debug colors turned on OPL right now, so that's why you're going to see some flashing colors. And there's Final Fantasy 12. Now, a lot of on like USB loading, I think even on MX4 SIO loading, you get a lot of stutter on the opening cutscene for this, and for a lot of games that have FMVs. So you don't see any stutter here, and it's the same for Kingdom Hearts, the same for Final Fantasy X. Basically, any game that has problems on the other loading methods work perfectly fine here, just like it was running on a hard drive. So it's It's pretty great in that respect. As far as fragmentation on the SD card, I'm not aware of any issues with fragmentation using the Grim Doomer EXFAT. I mean, the card basically is just read from, pretty much. That's the only thing it does, is it reads from the card. It does a little bit of writing in the form of like saving configuration files and stuff. And if you use virtual memory cards, then that's going to write to the card occasionally. But I don't think it does enough writing often enough that fragmentation would be a realistic concern. That's something you might want to check with like some of the forums that are involved in maintaining OPL, because if it was an issue, it'd probably be an OPL issue that would be known for SSDs as well. But I haven't heard of anything, and I've never had any problems running SD cards or SSDs on OPL, so I don't imagine you'd have an issue with it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and reassemble. I just want to get a few more images for the documentation. Okay, and then there's one screw that goes right here under the controller port. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall the modem as well. Now you might be doing a PixelFX gem, in which case the modem would not ever need to be reinstalled, of course, but if you're not doing a gem, you definitely want to go ahead and put the modem back in here so you don't have an empty hole in the back of your console. Get our lid reinstalled. Oh. Forgot a piece. I have not thought about moving the SD card to the back. The main reason being there's not a lot of good locations that you could put it in the back, because the back vent slots basically are in the area where you're going to be doing your soldering. I suppose you could maybe use this vent over here, but the other issue is that the power board gets power from a location right back there where the board is located, and if it was moved, that might be a pain to deal with, just because it wouldn't be in the exact same location as the power point that we're trying to get power from. There it goes. Sorry, I was having a little bit of trouble with my board. Not wanting to lock in place here. Interesting. Oh, let me... So it seems like this post here is conflicting with the cutout that I made for that post here. And I think it's because the entire bracket is shifted forward a little bit. So I'm gonna loosen the drive screws just a little bit and then slide that bracket forward. Just put a little pressure on it to slide it forward a little bit and then tighten them back down, and that should take care of that problem. You might have to do a little bit of fine tuning on getting the bracket installed correctly. There we go. Popped in place now. Okay, so that's solved. If you find that the back corner won't close completely, you might have to pop the board back out and readjust the bracket's position a little bit to get it to pop in place like it's supposed to. So now it closes properly. I have not tried booting it from an SD card, from the SD card directly using a Modbo. I don't have one installed in any of the Slims I've been testing with. I've been meaning to look into it because I know that there is some way to boot directly to the drive without using FreeMC boot using a mod chip. But I don't have one to test with. The only chipped PS2 I have is a FAT, and so this isn't really intended for those, so I haven't had a chance to test it. But it should work as long as the drive is formatted like a normal PS2 drive. You should be able to boot to it, because the PS2 sees this no differently than it would any other like SATA drive or IDE drive. So I'd be surprised if it didn't work. Oh, interesting. Okay, I gotta pop this back open. The SD card slot is not lined up where it's supposed to be. Probably because of that 3D printed bracket. I have made a change to the bracket so it's not as thick in that area that it was having trouble snapping into place. So it shouldn't be as hard to get it adjusted properly on the final version that you receive, but it is being particularly difficult here today for me. So we'll pop her back open real quick, try to fine tune that. DJC, I don't know if there are any other... Final Fantasy XI is the only game I know of that used the hard drive officially. I think you could get Linux running off of the hard drive for PS2. That was an official... That was the only other official application that I know of for the hard drive. Yeah, this bracket, this 3D printed bracket is just a little bit too tight. I wonder if the mold is a little bit different on this one than the others that I've tried it with. Here's what I'm gonna do. You shouldn't need to do this, because on the final version, this piece has been relocated slightly to take up less space here. But I'm going to go ahead and clip the end off of this. So we're just going to take some cutters and then just clip a little bit of the edge off right here. So that way it doesn't impact that point as much as it was before. And that should help everything else fit together more effectively. Yeah, that's going together much more smoothly. And now the SD card slot is aligned properly. So you shouldn't have to do that, but if you are having any issues getting everything aligned, you might want to trim off that edge there. Okay, now for real, we're going to reassemble this one. Yeah, you wouldn't see a 70,012 board in Australia, I wouldn't imagine, because I think that's only a North American board. 70,012, I believe 70,011 is North American as well. But I don't know what the Australian board model numbers are. You'll definitely want a 70,000 range board. I think the 70,000 just flat from Japan, that one I believe is almost guaranteed to be a V12. So that should be compatible if you get a Japanese 70,000. If there's another variant of 70,000 in Japan, I don't know what the number is. Could be a 70,010 or a 70,005 or who knows. I don't know what the numbers are exactly. But a 70,000 even should probably be a V12 motherboard. Is Australia a PAL region? I'm not sure. I don't know. Because if it is, if it is a PAL region, you probably got PAL, some of the PAL motherboards, which would have been like the 70,000. Well, let's see. One of the other chatters earlier was saying 70,004, I guess, is a PAL model. and it's potentially a mix between V13 and V12s. Hard to know for sure. Okay, so you can see the SD card slot is aligned properly now. The SD card will go straight in there. So now that we've got it all buttoned back up, let's go ahead and fire it up one more time to do another quick test. Oh. We need free MC boot installed. All right. There we go. So you can see we've got a substantial list of games here. This 1 terabyte card, I think I've got like 380 something games on here, and I still have 150 gigs free. That's using ZSOs. You save a lot of space using ZSOs. So I would recommend it if you're considering doing using the Grim Doomer EX-FAT build of OPL, because ZSOs save you a lot of space. But yeah. Yeah, Tyler, the kit includes the flex cables, the power board, and the 3D printed bracket. So all you have to do is bring an iFlash adapter, and you have to be able to remove the SD card slot. Or if you're sending it into me, I will remove the SD card slot for you and do all the prep work for you. But if you're doing it yourself, you just have to have some method to remove the SD card slot. You can use a hot plate like I did here today, but you got to be very careful not to heat up the portion of the iFlash board that's under the epoxy, because chances are you'll melt the solder and potentially get bridges that you can't repair under the epoxy. So I would avoid that if you can. Or you can just use a soldering iron and individually pry up each corner of the SD card slot until you are able to remove the top shield, and then you have to remove each individual pin by heating it up with solder and pulling it out with pliers until it pops loose. Another option might be to cut to take some side cutters and cut the corners of the SD card slot with those and pop it loose that way, but I've never tried that method, so we'll see. But anyways, this should give us an FMV. I don't know if the Resident Evil 4 FMV is usually a problem, but it's another example of an FMV.
It was right before I was to take on my duties of protecting the president's daughter that she was abducted.
Yeah, cutting the SD card shield might end up being the easiest method for a typical user to do. I don't know for sure yet because I haven't tried it myself, but it seems like that would probably be one of the easier ways to do it. Alrighties, well, guys, this has been tons of fun. I got a lot of good still images that I'm going to use for the guide. Just to remind everybody who's here, the launch is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you want to buy one, that's going to be the time that they'll go live on my website. I'm going to have a small batch of them available tomorrow. Because of the power board issue with the V13 and V12, basically I'm going to be launching tomorrow. I'll be launching with 85 units in stock. I suspect that those are going to sell out pretty quickly because of the amount of interest I've gotten in the email list. So probably they're not going to probably last tomorrow. But there is no limit per person. I don't want to put a limit per person on here because these are going to be easy for me to keep in stock. The issue is just going to be the delay from getting them manufactured to getting them here. So basically, there's no limit on how many per people. Yeah, sorry about that for the international people. I can't help it, man. Like, I chose 2 o'clock because it's a good time frame for the US. Because generally everybody is available around the 2 o'clock Central Time time period. But yeah, everybody else is kind of in trouble. But after this batch, I should have more available in probably a week to a week and a half. I don't know the exact date yet. The power boards are being made right now, the updated V13 power boards. When those get here, then I should have about 120 more in stock and available to buy. And then I should shortly after that be receiving another restock of everything. So I should be able to get to a point where all of the initial demand is filled and I still have them in stock. Probably, I would say within a month, we'll just have regular stock where they're just available all the time. So hopefully that's not too bad for everybody. These are fairly easy to just have another batch made, and they get made pretty quickly. So I should be able to keep up with demand, no problem. I will be offering installation services as well. So if this seems like something that's outside of your comfort level, you can certainly send it in to me. I only take PayPal, so you can pay with a card on PayPal, but PayPal is my payment processor. So if you want to use PayPal, feel free. Well, anyways, oh yeah, for my install services, basically all you would need to do is send in your console and an iFlash board. I'm working on the concept of maybe being able to place iFlash board orders for you if you can't send an iFlash board, if it's not practical for any reason, but that hasn't really been figured out yet. So at this point, you're going to need to send your own iFlash board. I might have a way for you to buy an iFlash board from me at a later time, though. But anyways, I think we're gonna... Oh, Tyler, yeah, SD card compatibility is limited by the iFlash itself. It doesn't really have anything to do with my adapters or anything that I've designed here. So as long as the iFlash has the same SD card compatibility issues that I have documented, those are going to remain on the iFlash2PS2 setup. Hopefully someday there will be an update maybe to the iFlash Solo that improves SD card compatibility. But I kind of suspect that there won't be, because for iPods, I think 1 terabyte is the maximum that an iPod can support. So the manufacturers of the iFlash are probably not super concerned about higher capacity cards. But I am hoping that the cards themselves will become more compatible over time, as newer models of SD cards come out. But we'll see. It really is up to the manufacturer of the iFlash whether or not any compatibility improvements take place. But you can do a lot with 1 terabyte, and there are several 1 terabyte cards that are completely reliable. So, anyways, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to call it for the night. But I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow for the launch. See some orders. Yeah, that is one of the advantages too with using the SD cards is the fact that you can easily access the card, swap it out, replace it. So it's not that big of a deal if you don't have all your library onto one card. Oh, when I share files for the Grim Doomer, you know what? The Grim Doomer EXFAT is actually really simple to do. You just have to format the card correctly, and then pretty much that's it. You just install Grim Doomer's version of OPL, format the card correctly, and then you have to turn on hard drives in the BDM device list, which I can actually show that real quick. Let me restart. We'll go ahead and hop back into OPL. I might write up a little note about using the Grim Doomer EXFAT on my written documentation, because that's my recommendation for this. I think the Grim Doomer EXFAT OPL version combined with this mod makes tons of sense because it is so easy to pull the SD card out and add games to it. Being able to use the Grim Doomer version of OPL is like a huge benefit. So basically, we're in the Grim Doomer OPL right now. All you really have to do in here is go down to where it says BDM start mode. You'll turn that to auto, and then you go to block devices, and you just turn HDD on. And that's really all you have to do. The HDD device start mode doesn't even have to be turned on at all. I have it set to manual because sometimes I do have another SD card that's formatted as a standard PS2 SD card that I put in here occasionally. So if you have the HDD device start mode turned on, it will still be able to access a regular, normally formatted PS2 hard drive card as well. But for the EXFAT to work, you just need to have BDM start mode to set to auto, and then block devices, you have to have HDD turned on. And then the card just needs to be formatted as an EXFAT card with just standard 512. I think it's 512. Is it 512 bytes or 512 kilobytes? I can't remember. Anyway, it's like the default format. It's pretty easy. Yeah, I hope that the Grim Doomer EXFAT drivers get merged back into OPL, the main OPL branch as well, because I don't know. I've looked at the changelog on OPL, and I don't see a ton of things that are super significant that would apply to hard drive booting. Most of the changes, I think, are with MX4 SIO support. But I would assume that there probably are some fixes that have been made that would affect hard drive booting that are not in the Grim Doomer version of OPL. So hopefully someday the EXFAT drivers get ported into the main OPL build and we don't have to specifically use the Grim Doomer fork anymore. But still, from my experience with it, it's been really reliable, and EXFAT is just a joy to work with. I am curious about dual booting, like doing formatting two partitions, one in EXFAT and then one in the standard PS2. What is it? APFS? No, that's Apple. What is it? I can't remember what it is. Anyway, whatever the format that the PS2 uses, I'd like to be able to dual boot, have two partitions, so that I could have one partition that can still be read by the PS2 for booting, for like storing like programs and stuff. APA, that sounds right. If we were able to have two partitions, you could still use stuff like installing ELFs to the SD card and booting them using FreeMC boot, or possibly even a mod chip. And then you could also still have the exFAT partition that you could drag and drop ISOs onto, which would be pretty cool. But I'm gonna look into that. But I don't know how feasible it is. But anyways, I think that's gonna do it for me today. But hopefully y'all get a shot at getting one tomorrow, and if not, then the restock should be pretty soon after that. So thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope y'all enjoyed the stream. We'll catch you next time.